Okay, welcome back, and in this demo lesson we're going to implement this structure within the Animals for Life VPC, and I definitely recommend that you follow along exactly what I do in this demo lesson step by step and implement this manually inside your own AWS account. Now, to implement this structure inside the VPC, we need to move across to my AWS console, so I'm going to go ahead and do that now. Now, before we get started, you need to make sure that you're logged in to the I am admin user of the management account of the organization, and then secondly, you need to select the Northern Virginia region from the region drop-down, so that's US-East-1. Now, before we get started, I wanted to highlight a tool which I found to be really useful when you're planning and creating subnets. So this is a tool which allows you to enter a network address block together with the number of subnets that you need, and it will calculate all of the IP address ranges and subnet masks so that you can configure those within your environment. So in this case, if we use the Animals for Life VPC, which is 10.16.0.0/16, it will provide us with a subnet mask, a number of hosts per subnet, and a drop-down which allows us to pick the number of subnets. So because in this lesson we're going to be implementing this structure, which is actually 16 subnets, even though we're not going to implement them all within this lesson, we're only going to use 3 availability zones, we'd still pick 16 subnets. And this would give us all of the IP addressing structure that we would need to configure the subnets within the VPC. So the first subnet would be 10.16.0.0, the second would be 10.16.16.0, and so on. So this is a really useful tool, and you might find it useful when you're creating your own VPCs and subnets. Now, inside this lessons folder in the course GitHub repository, I've put a file called subnets.txt, and this file lists the name of every subnet that you'll be creating, the CIDR range of every subnet you'll be creating, the availability zone that that subnet will be going into, and then an IP version 6 custom value, which I'll explain once we start creating the subnets. So these are all of the details which you'll need to create the subnets inside the Animals for Life VPC. So we're going to be creating the reserved database, application and web subnets within each of 3 availability zones, so AZA, AZB and AZC. So we're going to be creating a total of 12 subnets within this demo lesson. So to get started, we need to move across to the VPC console. So click in the Services drop-down and just type VPC and then click to move to the console. Now, AWS are currently updating large areas of this console, so when you're doing this lesson, it might look slightly different. I do my best to update any of my lessons as soon as any changes are made, but as you can see at the time of recording, many of these areas are new and updated. So if you just go ahead and click on your VPCs, you should see the A4L-VPC1 that we created in the previous demo lesson. As long as you see that, then we're good to go. We can click on subnets to begin the subnet creation process. Now, the subnets that you'll see in this list belong to the default VPC, and so you should always see a list of subnets in this area of the console, but we're going to create subnets inside the custom Animals for Life VPC that we created in the previous demo. So to get started, go ahead and click on Create Subnet. Now, this is one area of the console that has been recently updated, and it's made it significantly more efficient. Instead of having to create each subnet individually, now we can create a batch of subnets at the same time. So to do that, first we need to select the VPC ID that these subnets will be created within, and we're going to create 4 subnets at a time. We're going to do all of the ones in AZA, all of the ones in AZB, and then finally all of the ones in AZC. So to get started with this batch of 4, click in the VPC ID drop-down and select the A4L-VPC1. So this should be the custom VPC that uses the 10.16.0.0/16 CIDR range. And because you selected it in the previous demo, it also has a /56 IP version 6 allocation. And each of the subnets that we'll be creating within this custom VPC will also be using IP version 6. So go ahead and select this custom VPC and then scroll down and you're prompted to create your first subnet, so subnet 1 of 1. Now if you refer to the subnets.txt file that's in this lessons folder in the course GitHub repository, we're going to start by creating the reserved subnet in availability zone A. So the subnet name that we'll be using is SN for subnet -reserved -uppercase A, and A indicates the availability zone. So because we're creating this in availability zone A, click in the availability zone drop-down and select US-East-1A. Again, referring back to the subnets.txt document, we need to go ahead and enter the CIDR range that this particular subnet will be using. So click in this box and then type 10.16.0.0/20, and that's the CIDR range for this particular subnet within the Animals for Life VPC. And this is a subset of the wider VPC CIDR range, which is 10.16.0.0/16. So this is a smaller component of the VPC CIDR range. Now we are going to be allocating IP version 6, so click in this drop-down and change it to custom IP version 6. Now don't worry about IP version 6 too much because I'll be covering it later in the course, but every VPC can be allocated with a /56 IP version 6 CIDR. Every subnet within that VPC optionally can be allocated with a /64 CIDR. Now there are 256 /64 ranges within a /56 VPC. And so into this box you can type a value from 00 to FF, and these are hexadecimal values, and this provides 256 possible values. Now to keep things simple, we're just going to increment it each time, and we're going to start off with 00 for the reserved subnet in availability zone A. Now you'll see that it's automatically populated the tags. It's using name as the key, and then as the value SN-reserved-A. So this means that it will be displayed in the user interface with this name. Now this is where the enhancements of the new user interface are really valuable, because instead of creating each of these subnets one by one, we can go ahead and click on the Add New Subnet button and then create a second subnet as part of this same operation. So the second subnet we'll be creating is the SN-DB-A, so this is the database subnet in availability zone A. So we need to click in the AZ drop-down and select US-East-1A. I'm pulling these values again from the subnets.txt document. So the CIDR block for this subnet is 10.16.16.0/20. Again, we're going to assign an IP version 6 CIDR, so select custom IPv6, and then this time 01 for this custom value. You'll see it's also tagged with the name that we've selected. Scroll down and click on Add New Subnet. So now we can create a third subnet in the same operation. This is going to be the application subnet. For the availability zone, click in the drop-down and select US-East-1A. And then for the IP version 4 CIDR block for the application subnet, it's 10.16.32.0/20. Again, we will be using IP version 6, so select custom. This time it's 02 for this custom value. And then scroll down and click on Add New Subnet. And this is the last subnet we'll be creating in this batch. This time it's the web subnet in availability zone A. So select US-East-1A in the availability zone drop-down. Use this value for the CIDR, so 10.16.48.0/20. Again, these are coming from the subnets.txt document. We will be using an IP version 6 CIDR block, so select custom IPv6 and then enter 03 into this box. So this is creating 4 subnets: the web subnet, the app subnet, the DB subnet, and the reserved subnet, all of which are in availability zone A. So once we've entered all of those details, we can scroll all the way down to the bottom and click on Create Subnet. And at this point, it's going to go ahead and create all of those 4 subnets. And that's been done. So we've got these 4 subnets now which exist inside this VPC: sn-web-a, sn-reserved-a, sn-app-a, and then sn-db-a. And all of these are contained within the Animals for Live custom VPC. So now we need to create all of the subnets in availability zone B. So let's go ahead and do that. Click on Create Subnet again. In the VPC ID dropdown, go ahead and select the Animals for Life VPC, so A4L-VPC1. And we'll follow the same process again to create the subnets in availability zone B. And again, this is all from the subnets.txt document. So subnet name is sn-reserved-b. For availability zone, go ahead and select US-East-1B, so B this time. For the IP version 4 CIDR block 10.16.64.0/20, we will be assigning IP version 6, so select Custom IPv6 and then enter 04 into this box. So remember, we're just incrementing this by 1 each time we create a subnet. Next, let's do the next subnet. So click on Add Subnet. This time it's the database subnet in availability zone B, so enter the subnet name. Click in the availability zone dropdown and select US-East-1B. This time it's 10.16.80.0/20 for the IP version 4 CIDR. Click in the IP version 6 dropdown, custom IPv6, and enter 05 into this box. We'll do the third subnet. This time it's the application subnet in availability zone B. So click in the availability zone dropdown, US-East-1B. The IP version 4 CIDR is 10.16.96.0/20. Change this one to custom IPv6. This time it's 06 for this value. Scroll down and then click on Add New Subnet for the last time of this batch. We're going to be adding the web subnet, so sn-web-b. Again, US-East-1B for the availability zone. The IP version 4 CIDR for this subnet is 10.16.112.0/20. Again, custom IPv6, and then 07 for this value. Scroll down, and as that's the last subnet of the batch within availability zone B, go ahead and click on Create Subnet. And once these 4 have created, we're going to do this same process one last time for availability zone C. So click on Create Subnet. For the last time, pick this VPC, so A4L-VPC1, and this time all of these are in availability zone C. So we'll start by creating the reserved subnet. Pick US-East-1C. The CIDR for this one, 10.16.128.0/20, custom IPv6, and then 08 for this value. Scroll down, add a new subnet. This time the DB subnet in availability zone C. Pick US-East-1C, 10.16.144.0/20 for the IP version 4 CIDR, custom IPv6, 09 this time. Scroll down, add new subnet. Next it's the application subnet in availability zone US-East-1C, the IP version 4 CIDR, 10.16.160.0/20, custom IPv6. Now this time, because the previous subnet was 09, because this is hexadecimal, it doesn't go from 09 to 10, it goes from 09 to 0A, so A for alpha. So that's the next value that we'll pick. Scroll down, add new subnet for the last time. This time it's the web subnet in availability zone US-East-1C. The IP version 4 CIDR for this one is 10.16.176.0/20. custom IPv6, and this time, again, we're incrementing one hexadecimal value. The previous one was 0A, so this one is 0B. And that's the last subnet we'll be creating in this availability zone and in this demo lesson. So scroll all the way to the bottom and click on Create Subnet. And that creates these last 4 subnets. So let's remove all of these filters by clicking on Clear Filters. And then just click on this arrow to expand this portion of the screen. It makes it a little bit easier to see, and we'll close down the notification at the top. Now, if we sort the list of subnets by name, the ones at the top will be the ones for the default VPC because they don't have a name. If we scroll down, we'll see that we have SN-app-A, app-B, app-C. We've got 3 database subnets, A, B, and C, 3 reserved subnets, A, B, and C, and then 3 web subnets, A, B, and C. Now, we've got one final thing that we need to do on these subnets. Now, these subnets, while they do have an IP version 6 allocation, we need to make sure that we configure them to automatically allocate an IP version 6 address to any resources launched within these subnets. So we need to select each of the subnets. So we'll start with SN-app-A. We'll click on the Actions drop-down and we'll go to Edit Subnet Settings. We'll click that and we'll check the box that says Enable Auto Assign IP version 6 address. Now, we're not going to do anything with the Auto Assign IP version 4 within this demo lesson. This is where you can set a subnet to allocate a public IP version 4 address. And we're going to be talking about that in the next demo lesson, where we're going to be implementing the internet gateway, routing, and configure the web subnets so that they're public subnets. Now, I haven't covered this yet, so we're going to leave this as default. We're not going to enable it. We're only going to touch the IP version 6 auto assign setting. So check this box and click on Save, clear the filters, and we need to follow that same process for all of the other subnets that we've created. So app B, Actions, Edit Subnet Settings, Enable for IP version 6, clear the filters again, do the same for application C, Actions, Edit Subnet Settings, and then we're going to follow the same process for all of the other subnets that we've created. So database A, database B, database C, and then we'll go on to the reserved subnets. We'll start with A, then we'll do B, finish up the reserved with C, and then lastly we'll do the web subnets. So start with A, then we'll do B, before finishing up with the final subnet SN-web-C. And that's the last one. Now, I know that this has been a fairly laborious process. It's been slow, it's been admin heavy, and you've been doing the same task over and over again. But I want you to have the experience of creating these subnets manually. As a solutions architect, a developer, or an engineer, you need to be aware of all of the fundamental network concepts within AWS. And a good foundation of that is that at least once you need to create a VPC from scratch. So that's creating the VPC, creating and configuring all of the subnets, and then adding additional network devices such as an internet gateway and a NAT gateway, all of which we're going to cover later in this section of the course. Now, there are ways that we can automate this process, which you'll also learn as you move through the course, but this once I wanted you to get the experience of doing it manually so you can appreciate how much better the automation tools within AWS make this process. Now, when you do have all of these subnets created, go ahead and select one of them. Let's say database subnet A. And then if we just drag this up from the bottom, you'll see an overview screen where you can access all of the detailed information about this specific subnet. So you'll see that it has a subnet ID. You'll see the number of available IP version 4 addresses, and of course this is always minus the 5 IP version 4 addresses which are reserved in every single subnet. It also shows you the IP version 6 CIDR for this particular subnet. It shows you the VPC that it's part of, the availability zone, the version 4 CIDR of that particular subnet, the route table that's linked to this subnet, which I'll be talking about later in this section, the network ACL, which is linked to this subnet. Again, I'll be talking about it later in this section. And then you can see all of the auto-assign settings, so IP version 4 public addresses, as well as IP version 6 addresses. Now spend a couple of minutes just familiarising yourself with this VPC console. It has recently been updated, and so you do need to make sure that you're comfortable with where all of the various pieces of information are displayed. But at that point, that is everything that you need to do in this demo lesson. You've taken the configuration of the VPC that you finished with at the end of the previous demo lesson, and you've extended it by creating a total of 12 subnets split across 3 availability zones within that VPC. Now later in this section, as you learn about all of the different networking products and features available within AWS, we're going to extend this further by configuring additional networking. But for now, that's everything that you needed to do. So we're going to go ahead and complete this lesson. Now you can leave all of this configuration in place. None of it is billable. There's no charge for VPCs or subnets, and we will be using this in the next demo lesson. But at this point, go ahead and finish off this video, and when you're ready, I look forward to you joining me in the next.